Okay, welcome everyone in the rest of the world. This is Larson Training Centers, and this is a Hangout on Air with Father MaxOliva, the best Jesuit in the state of Nevada. Father Max is going to talk about honesty in the workplace and a little bit about his history, what brought him here to Las Vegas, and we'll go over Chapter 3, why honesty is important, and it's especially important for the students here because trust is the most important thing in employment, especially for our students.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm also from California. Grew up in Los Angeles County, and came from a family that, let's see how I can describe it. My father came from a blue-collar background in San Francisco, what's known as the North Beach Italian neighborhood. Grew up with the DiMaggio brothers and other people who lived in that area. Dave Castellagio, who's a priest here. My mother, however, came from a very wealthy background from Marin County, across the Golden Gate Bridge on the other side there, back when there was lots of land and less houses. Anyway, they got married, and we started out in San Francisco, and then after the Second World War, they decided to move down to Los Angeles, and of course I went with them. I was 6. No joys. My father was a very successful businessman. He had a food brokerage company in Southern California, and I worked with him a few times during the summer, and that was really good, good experience. He had a very strong commitment to the virtue of honesty. I discovered this the hard way. And when I was a teenager, I made a few, well, I didn't think they were exactly lies, but he saw them as lies, and so I got grounded a couple of times, and that's how I learned honesty is the best policy, because I didn't like getting grounded. And he told me also, because he worked a lot, he was a salesman, and he had to build relationships with his customers, how the importance of how honesty leads to trust, and if you don't have trust, well, then you can't deal with somebody because you never know what they're going to do next. So then I went to college, and same college actually that Ed went to, although I was before him, and then his father also went there, who was before me, Santa Clara University near San Jose, California. You learn a lot about yourself in difficult circumstances, as I'm sure you can agree. After college, I had the opportunity to do a little traveling, and so I went to Europe, which was at that time the place to go if you had a grandmother who had a little extra money and kept funneling it towards you. Plus, I had worked during the summers, and so I was able to go there. I went with a guy who I knew from college, a fellow named Steve, who was an engineering major. Steve had a real interest in Jesuit history, so I belong to a religious order called the Society of Jesus, otherwise known as Jesuits. We're known mostly for education in the United States, universities, high schools, but also missionary work. I'm a missionary. I'm the only Jesuit here in Nevada, so that's it. So while traveling, Steve had this interest in Jesuit history, so we both wanted to go to, among other places in our trip, we wanted to go to Pamplona, Spain. He wanted to go there because that's the town where Ignatius of Loyola was injured in a fierce battle with the French. He was a soldier, and one of his legs was broken, and the other was he was injured in the other one as well. And he eventually had to leave the battlefield, and the French were so impressed with his bravery that they gave him the use of their own doctors, and then they brought him back to his brother's castle in Manresa, in the Basque Country, where he did his convalescence. So Steve wanted to go to Pamplona in order to go to the place where this historical event happened. I wanted to go to Pamplona because I wanted to run with the bulls.
Yeah.
So, I remember one time I was talking to a guy from Central America who we were taking a walk. It was another Jesuit, and he asked me if I'd ever been to Spanish-speaking countries, and I said, well, I spent some time in Spain when I was younger. And he said, where did you go? And I said, well, among other places, I went to Pamplona. And he said, did you run? And I said, I did, twice. Once sober. And he said, oh, you are an hombre, or you are loco, one of the two, right? So I learned, I have this kind of spirit of adventure in me that takes me into very interesting places all over the world. My first job after I got back from Europe and went in the Coast Guard for a while, and then went to work for a food cannery in San Jose, California, as a preparation for eventually going in with my father in his business. And I had an experience there that really marked, probably gave me a real sense of how much I had learned from my parents. So I had my own territory. I was young. I was 25, 26 years old. But I was younger than that. I was 23. And so the assistant sales manager quit unexpectedly, and therefore they had to shuffle everybody around. So being the youngest guy, they gave me what they thought would be the territory that I could do the least harm in. And that was Oregon, Washington, and Vancouver. So I had this expense account. I was 23 years old. I could stay at the best hotels, rent a car, really nice restaurants. And then when I'd come back, because of the way I was raised, I would sit down and I would itemize everything I had spent, right? Where I had gone and how much I had spent. And then I would turn it into the what they called the treasurer at that time, the company treasurer. Well, fine, everything's going along fine. And I don't know, a couple of months goes by, and one day I'm in my office, and one of the salesmen comes in and says, we need to talk. Now, this is a guy older than me, twice as old as me, been in the industry for years, And I said, sure, nice guy, could be kind of a mentor, And he said to me, you're making us look bad. And I said, I thought, what does he mean? Is it my sales? Are they going that well? And I said, well, what do you mean? What's the problem? And he said, you are too honest. Well, what was going on was that the other salesmen, some of them were padding their expense accounts, right, when they go on their trips, and I wasn't. And the treasurer was beginning to see, there's a discrepancy here between what people are spending on their, and so he'd gotten on their case about it, and so I was faced with a slight dilemma, right? Should I compromise my values because then I'd be accepted by these guys, or should I tell them, tough, this is the way I was raised, and that's the way it's going to be for me. And so, in a nice way, but in a firm way, I said, look, my parents raised me in such a way that honesty is very important to me, and so this is the way it's going to stay. And so there was some tension for a while in the office because of this experience, but eventually they kind of calmed down and accepted me and adjusted their own behavior, which was good. So I learned something, about myself in that. I learned that, my parents had really taught me well, and I also learned that that I had more courage than I thought I had, because it takes courage to say no to peer pressure, and that's what this was. This was peer pressure. This was not peer pressure. This was older pressure against a younger guy, right? but still it's pressure. And so that was really helpful for me to learn about myself. Another virtue which became very important to me, and did you show them this book?
Yeah.
They've seen the book?
Yes.
Okay, so this some of them have it, right? So this was written, finished in 2009 after I had lived up in Alberta, Canada for 9 years and worked among people in the business community up there, mainly in the oil and gas industry. Met lots of great people who are really struggling to live their values to the best of their ability. When I first started working with them, I asked 15 different people in the working world. I asked them some basic questions. I was trying to figure out what to do with this idea I had to work with people in the business world, and on integration of faith and your work. And so I asked them some questions when I went in to interview each person. And the first question was, what are your basic faith values? Which made people, sit back and think, yeah, what are my basic faith values? These were men and women in various industries in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, right straight up above Montana. So the second question was, what are the ethical problems that you run into in your company, if you do run into any, and what are the ethical issues that you run into in your industry? And the third question was, I had given them a copy of what's called a mission statement, where you line up, you tell people this is what I'm about, and what my vision is for what I'm proposing to do. So I gave them that, and I gave them a little short bio of me, and I said, so what do you think I can do here with what my skills are and what the needs are in the community? And so that's how the whole thing developed. Well, when I asked people about their basic faith values, I would say 90% of the people said that the most important virtue for me is integrity. Now, integrity is very connected to honesty, because if you're honest, and if you're honest with yourself and honest with others, then you are living, a life of integrity. So I want to say a little bit about integrity, because it's a very important virtue. First of all, integrity presupposes having a sense of oneself, right? My own self-worth, which gets battered, as you know, by various circumstances. But you need to have some kind of sense of your intrinsic worth, right? If it hasn't come from significant people in your life, parents or teachers, then you have to find it somewhere. Now, I was lucky, I had good parents, but my father and I did have issues. We seemed to be friendly until I hit 14, and then we kind of went our separate ways. So my father, one of his, we have gifts, right? We all have gifts. We all have, sometimes the gift also has this dark side to it. So my father had a great sense of humor. Yeah, he loved a pun, I'll give you an example. We're driving out in the country one day, and we saw some cattle up on the side of a hill, and my father says, "Don't let your meat loaf." So you gotta have that mindset to pick that one up. Don't let your meat loaf. Work. But my father, see, he had that sense of humor, but the dark side of the sense of humor was he could slip into this sarcasm, right? And you never knew when that was going to happen. It was kind of confusing growing up with this. He could slip into that sarcasm, and the sarcasm, which probably was fueled by anger or something, I don't know, would then get kind of cutting, right? He could put you down in front of your friends, which really bothered me when I was in high school. So I just kind of avoided him as much as possible. And so there was some, there was some damage in that to my self-image because of that. But I didn't know that. I mean, I wasn't thinking about all this. It was later when I look back. So I get in I'm 24 years old. I'm sitting in my office at the cannery one day. I just come back from one of my sales trips, and this thought came into my head. I think I want to be a priest. What? I mean, that came out of nowhere. I was living, I was a bachelor. I had good friends. I had a social life. I had a car of my dreams. I had everything going for me, and then this thing seemed to come out of nowhere. But it had a real kind of power to it, and so eventually I gave notice to my boss and left the job and gave all my belongings to my father and went into the Jesuit seminary. And it was in there when I had a lot of quiet time to kind of reflect on my life that I began to see things differently, like patterns in my relationship to my father and mother and everybody else. But I did have this kind of, every once in a while, I had this kind of sense of not sure about myself. And so I went to see one of the older guys, older priests, who was really brilliant on understanding people's psyche. And I explained to him kind of what I said. Every once in a while, I get these feelings of lack of self-worth or something. I don't know why I'm getting this. I don't know where it's coming from. So he said, well, he said, I'll tell you what, he said, I'm going to give you a phrase to say every time you feel like something's off inside yourself. Whatever it is, he said, I'm going to give you this phrase to say. And he said, at first, he said, it's going to be all in your head. But keep saying it and come see me every once in a while. And let's see if something might eventually click for you and it'll go from your head to your heart. So the phrase was, God loves me and nothing else matters. God loves me and nothing else matters. As the foundation of who I am, right? God loves me, nothing else matters, which means nobody else's opinion. I mean, you like to have opinions of you that are good, but that's not going to throw off my basic core, which is God loves me and nothing else matters. And that became gradually, as he said, went from my head to my heart. That became the center of my integrity, right? So if you have something that's really basic in the core of who you are, that you have a sense of yourself as being worthwhile, and if you're and that grows with experience, because every time you say no to something that's not good, you get stronger in yourself, and every time you say yes to something that's good and difficult to do, like the situation at the company when I said to the guy, I'm not changing, you're going to have to change. Well, I grew, then I became more comfortable in myself and more confident about myself. So integrity presupposes having a sense of oneself, being true to one's values, regardless of what others may think or say. And for me, that comes back to God's love. Now, if you're in AA, the 12 steps is what really helps people to get a sense of their self. So you got to be grounded in something. Could be God, could be family, could be country, something that gives you a sense of meaning, that beyond yourself, right? Now, integrity comes from the word integer, I-N-T-E-G-E-R, which means wholeness and completeness, right? Authenticity, self-respect, a sense of, this is who I am, and I'm comfortable with who I am. I may not be perfect, nobody's perfect, but I am doing my best to live my values, and therefore I am more and more a sense of wholeness. Moral courage comes in here, the courage of your convictions, ability to say no to that which seeks to harm you, and ability to say yes to that which seeks to help you. I looked at the 12 steps, which I like very much, and I noticed that there's quite a few of them that are related to honesty and integrity. So the first one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, that our lives had become unmanageable. We admitted, boy, that's a big step, right? When you say, I got a problem, that's a moment of real integrity and honesty. Honesty with self, really important. Number 4, I made a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself, right? A fearless, that's brutal honesty with yourself. I remember when I first moved up to Canada, I didn't move directly to Calgary. I moved on to a Blackfoot Indian reservation about an hour and a half outside of Calgary, out in the middle of the prairies. And one day I met this fellow, and he said, I'm in the 12-step program, and I got to do number 4, and I want you to be the guy for me to do this with. And I said, sure. He was about maybe late 30s. So I thought, this was one of my first, so I thought, oh, this will be fine. Well, this will last about an hour. No, 2 days. After 2.5 hours, I was totally exhausted the first day, and I said, can we conclude this tomorrow? I need a break, because he was so honest. I mean, he went way back, and into his whole history and relationship to his parents and the alcohol that he was introduced to when he was young, and getting free of it, and he was doing really well when I met him. But he did this inventory. I mean, he just looked at everything, and then of course you have to tell it to somebody, and that's part of that courage, right? The courage of getting it outside yourself and telling it to somebody else, and trusting that that person won't reject you, put you down. So you got to pick somebody who really is solid and can handle it. So that's number 4. Number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Well, that's similar to 4. Honesty related to others, right? Honesty related to others. Number 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. You may have to ask for help on that. Say, did I harm you at any point? Did I, by my behavior, have I hurt you in any way, to my family or friends or people I grew up with, or teachers or whatever? Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Again, there's that honesty and courage and integrity, a sense of, look, I realize I've made some mistakes, and I want to change my behavior, and I want to change the way I'm thinking, and I want to change the kind of people I hang around with, and I want to be in situations that are helpful for me to grow and not harmful. Number 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful with truth. Truth is important, but truth can slice somebody in half, so you have to be also, is that person ready to hear what I have to say, or maybe I should do this with somebody else, kind of thing. And continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Okay, I think that's about it for now.